It's finally here. The game. Undefeated Ohio State, undefeated Michigan, going at it in Columbus. We're going to be there. Super fired up for that. But this is a playoff game. And games of this caliber oftentimes come down to, yes, the stars playing well. That's going to be a huge factor. Don't get it twisted. But what about the X factors? What about that counterpunch that we talk about so much when the plan A isn't working or the plan A goes down, whatever it may be, in plan B? The unsung hero, the role player, has to step up and play the starring role. What happens then? Well, I think there is a number of role players, X factors, whatever kind of label you want to put to them, guys that are going to make a big impact in this game. I want to make sure that we're on the same page when those things do happen. I want to make sure that you're prepped, that we get out in front of this before you hear these names called in a big way this coming Saturday. All right, so 3 from Ohio State, 3 from Michigan that, again, I think will play a big factor that maybe aren't getting quite as much buzz as the C.J. Strouds or the J.J. McCarthys or the Blake Corums. We're hoping he's healthy and ready to roll in this game. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. The first role player, or the first X factor, rather, for me, for Ohio State, Dallin Hayden, the running back. Now, no surprise here. The running back room for Ohio State is, we're trying to get healthy. Travion Henderson played a little bit last week. Looked like he aggravated that lower extremity injury. Mayan Williams did not play last week against Maryland. So they're trying to, kind of get back into it. Trying to get that running back room healthy. But if they're not able to be at full strength, even if, they're able to play, but they're not full strength, expect Dallin Hayden to play a major role. Now, I love what Ryan Day did with him this past weekend against Maryland. Not getting much rolling in the first half on the ground, so they just said, Dallin Hayden, we're going to feed you. I believe he had 27 carries, well over 100 yards. He was the workhorse that day. Now, why is that important? Because in this game against Michigan, you will have to ask something of Dallin Hayden. Whether it's 15 to 20 carries, whether it's 5 to 10 carries, regardless, he will be better prepped for this game because of the way that you utilized him against Maryland. But Dallin Hayden will impact this game. Regardless of the carry count, he will be an X factor in this football game. So keep an eye on that. For Michigan, we talk about it a lot. Hey, what are they going to do going deep? Throwing the football. We know they can run it. We know that's who they are. That's their edge. That's their identity. And they're just fine with you stacking the box and them continuing to run power. How they get down at Michigan. And we love it. We approve of that gameplay. You can't go broke getting paid. However, in a game like this, if they're able to force you to a 3rd and 10 or a 3rd and 8, which they found themselves in a couple of times against Illinois, who's that deep threat for you? Well, if you're looking for a matchup, I think Cornelius Johnson could be the one to take a peek at. He's right around 6'3", 208 pounds. The reason I say he could be a favorable matchup for you is Dante Demas from Maryland is a similar frame. And it wasn't like he just went crazy against Ohio State, but he was the leading receiver in that game. Translation, big body receivers could be able to soften up that coverage. Now, I'm not saying you're going to go to the well every time and have that be what, hits for you every single time. I'm just saying Cornelius Johnson, I like his size advantage, and I really like the fact that they've been close a couple of times with him on the deep ball. Couple of times they've taken shots deep and just been a yard here, a yard off there. If they connect on the deep shot this game, expect Cornelius Johnson to be one of those guys they're targeting early. So Cornelius Johnson, in my opinion, could have a very big impact on this game. Quick note, if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, we would love to have y'all along for the ride. A lot of Michigan fans, a lot of Ohio State fans. We've had somewhere in the range over 1,000 of y'all in the last week and a half join the party. So if you haven't yet, come join us. The water's fine. If you have already, we're glad you're here. Also follow me on the socials at JD Piquel on Twitter and Instagram. We are going to be in Columbus. So fired up to see all of y'all there. Next X factor for me, staying on the Michigan side of things. How about Colston Loveland? Freshman tight end, big body, right around 6'5". Expect him to impact this game from the play action standpoint. We saw it a couple of times against Illinois, but they love sneaking him out in the flat or having him on that out route. And his size and speed makes him an interesting case study if you get him matched up on a linebacker, or maybe, you get him matched up on a defensive back, maybe his size plays an advantage. He's so tough to match up with. He's kind of the modern day tight end that we're starting to see more and more of. In the pass game especially, I like what they could do with him for J.J. McCarthy. Like I said, the plan is to run the football. If they can run power 8 times in a row, I promise you they will. But what happens when they get near the goal line and it's 3rd and goal and you've been stopped twice on the 3-yard line? Play action, Colston Loveland. I think he's going to have an impact on this game. They targeted him a few times last weekend, giving me some indication they want to get him involved. So Colston Loveland, a guy to keep an eye on in this game as well because of what he does from a matchup standpoint and how he blends so perfectly off of the play action at that tight end position. Now, there's 2 players on Ohio State's defensive line that I want to make sure we highlight. The first one being Jack Sawyer, defensive end. You saw him pop, I want to say it was a year and a half ago. In the spring game, he put on an absolute clinic. I believe he was a freshman. And he's a guy they're really excited about at Ohio State. And this could be, in some way, shape, or form, like a big coming out party for him. He's played well this year, but he's also playing opposite of JT Tuimoloau. And I think JT could be a guy that gets more attention in this game. And when that happens, let's say they do assign an extra blocker to JT. Well, they assign an extra blocker to him. Well, guess what? That's one less guy that's responsible for the rest of that defensive line. Meaning, Jack Sawyer, go to work, brother. We need you to go and make something happen, especially applying pressure on those obvious passing situations. I think they're going to ask a lot of 33. Second guy I'm looking at on this defensive line for Ohio State, Mike Hall. Now, Mike Hall is playing defensive tackle. He's had a really strong season, and the reason why I think he's an X factor in this game, going back to what Michigan wants to do, whether it's Corum, whether it's Stokes, they're going to try and get downhill. He is going to have to take on those blocks, whether it's inside zone or whether it's a power and you got to pull in guard. Like, he will have to be that anchor of the defensive line. He will have to have his heels in the ground, push back, and stop that surge, which is easier said than done. Now, Mike Hall may not make a ton of tackles. Like, that's not really what they're asking him to do. What they're asking him to do is to be someone who takes on a block, in a perfect world, takes on 2 blocks and creates carnage in the middle of that run play. Then the picture gets a little bit more murky for the back, whoever it is. Then the holes become a little bit less clear, which allows that linebacking core to rally the troops. Safeties can get downhill, and you eventually get to the back. Because if Mike Hall doesn't bring his A game and he gets pushed back and Michigan's able to kind of have their way up front, well, then they're able to play their game, run the football effectively. Then they're able to, kind of dictate their tempo to you. So Mike Hall is a huge X factor in this football game. Last person I'm looking at as an X factor in the Michigan-Ohio State-Michigan football game, however you want to, phrase it, the game, Will Johnson. Now, he's only a freshman. He's playing corner. He's starting at corner. Absolute stud recruit. He's playing early, like I already mentioned. The reason why I think he's so fascinating in this game is how he could impact the coverage of Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, everybody knows Marvin Harrison Jr., one of the best, if not the best wide receivers in all of the country. He's freakish blend of size and speed. Daddy was in the league. Like, dude's a player. And I'm curious to see how they utilize Will Johnson up against him. So I talked to somebody close to the Michigan program, and they said they like Will Johnson as a matchup because of what he has in the size department. He's 6'3", 190, and also ball skills, meaning when that football is in the air, there's not a lot of panic in Will Johnson. He's able to get his head around and try to go mano-a-mano with a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. So it's not really Michigan's style to have one guy follow around the number 1 receiver. But when you get that matchup with Marvin Harrison Jr. or Will Johnson, if Will Johnson can at least somewhat take away the sting of what 18 is going to present for you on the outside, I think that's a world you would like to live in for Michigan, because then you have to look to the number 2, the number 3 receiver. Emeka Egbuka stepped up big time for Ohio State last week. Can he do it again this week? Will Johnson could be the key to minimizing that just a little bit for the Michigan defense. So in summary, we like Dallin Hayden, Jack Sawyer, Mike Hall on the Ohio State side of things to all be X factors and play a huge role. And for Michigan, Cornelius Johnson, Will Johnson and Colston Loveland will also make their presence felt on both sides of the football, respectively. Regardless, though, it's going to be an absolute blast. So fired up to be there, so fired up to see all of you there. It's going to be a good time. It will be the biggest game on the entire slate, potentially the entire season for college football. All right, we'll see y'all there. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Nick Brake does the real heavy lifting. We appreciate you. We love y'all. We're going to keep the party rolling, and we will see y'all next time. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.